Hey there. We'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you're helping us spread the word and connect with more amazing people like you.
Welcome to We Be Parents, where parent doctors Matthew Letterman and Alona Pulday explore current parenting topics, share stories, and help bring families closer together.
Hello, and welcome to We Be Parents, where we dive into the joys and challenges of parenting and uncover tools that help us create more connection in our families. I'm Dr. Alona Pulday.
And hi, I'm Dr. Matthew Letterman.
In our last episode, we explored how our energy shapes our children's emotional state through co-regulation. Today, we're going to be sharing real stories from families just like yours, successes, strugglers, and listener questions.
So before we jump in, though, we ask that you subscribe and rate and review this podcast. It really helps us get out there and help other people see us. So we really thank your support there.
And just to give a little bit of a summary of what we talked about last week, we were really talking about how, whether it's positive or negative, our mood, our family functions as one nervous system. And the energetic state or mood that one person has can be very contagious. Similarly to a yawn, when somebody in the family is particularly tense, it's hard for the rest of the family not to mirror that as well.
And I know that when I'm irritable or angry, it can send an irritable energy throughout the household. And something as simple as connecting with the family and sharing what's behind my irritability actually shifts the energy of the household again. So if I stay irritable and try to keep it in because I don't want my irritation to get out, it actually backfires because I don't feel less irritable. And then the irritability, that's mirrored by the family through their mirror neurons that are designed to do this, create the irritability in them too. So it really behooves us to connect and then soften as a result of that self-connection that then is mirrored as well.
And that goes right into the tool that we discussed in the last episode, which was the reset ritual. And you can do this in a variety of different ways. We like to regulate using the We Calm to get, and from the We Calm, learning how to take We breaths with or without the device.
I mean, we're a little biased because we created the We Calm, but we created it to actually give the feedback of what an effective calming breath feels like versus, especially for children, they just start, you tell them to breathe and they'll be like, which actually, if anything, stimulates more dysregulation than regulation.
Yeah, so that's our tool of choice, but, pick yours. And if you already have a practice, keep doing that. But the reset ritual, just to remind listeners, the first step is to pause and notice. What energy are you as the parent bringing in at the moment? The next one is to take some deep breaths to really connect to where you are at and to take those deep breaths to try and help you get to the third step, which is ground yourself so that you can feel your feet, so that you can bring that state of calm back to yourself. Your body can soften, which is step 4. And then you can, in a state of calm, reconnect to your child in a way that can offer more of a warm, connecting, reassuring tone over a tense and dysregulated one. So again, the steps are pause and notice, take your deep breaths, ground yourself, soften your body, and reconnect with your child.
Headlines and heartlines.
I love to celebrate successes. All right.
So the first one is about a mom that noticed that every morning her child had a meltdown before school. And instead of getting frustrated, she paused and took deep breaths, slowing herself down. And to her surprise, her child stopped melting down and instead leaned in for a big hug. And to me, what I liked about that was that that's the power of co-regulation. When we shift our kids shift.
I love that. I shared a story and I'll give a recap of it. This was when my oldest was really young and she was mad at me. And in that situation, I happened to feel really resourced in talking to her, just kind of mirroring where she was at, having empathy for her situation. She quickly turned around to no longer being mad at me and taking her upset out on someone else. But it's amazing how quickly kids can react to that state of calm and shift where they're at. So I love that. Co-regulation is so, so powerful.
So the next story is the power of softening. And to me, it shows that just softening our tone can create instant connection. So this was about a dad who is frustrated with his child's whining. And we've all been there where the whining is like nails on a chalkboard. But instead of snapping this time, he softened his voice and said simply, "Hey, tell me what's wrong." And his child immediately relaxed and explained their feelings. So it doesn't have to be this long, drawn out, therapeutic conversation. It's just sending energy that says, "Hey, I care about you and I'm here to listen."
And for anyone who's struggling to identify with that, anybody who's listened to a meditation tape or a guided meditation, you don't have somebody yelling at you or talking at 1.5 speed. It's a very calm and soothing voice that takes you into that state of relaxation.
Yeah, I know way back when I got one of these, I used to listen to books on tape, and I got this book on how to relax and calm and meditate. And I put the book on 2 times speed because I was trying to get through it as quick. Like I do all my books, I try to get through them quickly. And then as I'm listening to this guy talking really fast, like a munchkin, about calming and relaxing, taking slow breaths, I was like, "Wait a second, you dummy, what are you doing here?" And that's when I said, "Hey, I got to slow this one down to 1 time speed." So
That is a good story. I like that one. Some of our stories are not quite as successful. You want to talk about some of the
here's one on
challenges?
an overwhelmed parent where a mom shared that she struggles with staying calm because her own parents never modeled regulation. So she just struggles. There's a lot of habitual energy, a lot of habit, a lot of, and that's the beauty of neural pathways is repetition is all it takes to build them. And it's like going from a dirt road to a super highway. The more repetitions, the more you strengthen that path. And you can strengthen that path with regulating behaviors, or you can strengthen that path with dysregulating behaviors. But through choice, you can choose to go down a different road. And over time, you can build up this other pathway, and the previously built out pathway will start to get overrun with weeds and grass and start to fall apart. So you can shift pathways by shifting your energy and focus and practice from one that you don't enjoy to one that you do enjoy. So how your parents raised you will have created pathways that are strong and reinforced, but you have the power to create new ones and reinforce those.
And a lot of that depends on your own state of regulation, right? You're connecting to yourself because those default behaviors are so ingrained and so easy to do. And I know we each have different types of those. Like I know that when my mom raising us was very fearful. So, it's don't go out alone. That's dangerous. And don't play on that playground because that swing can be dangerous. You could fall off the swing and you can, fall off the structure, whatever that is. And so I remember when the kids would go to the park and try adventurous things and my heart would just be racing. And if they fell, it would be, this gasp versus it's okay. Let's see where they're at. Let's see what actually happened before I react and assume the worst. I know for you, it was around spills and accidents.
Yeah, for spills, it's all that what was modeled. And that So for us, spills were a terrible thing, and it was there could be yelling or upset or whatever, and I would get nervous around spills, and then I would get worked up and upset at myself, mirroring that behavior that was modeled for me. On the flip side, at a park, I would do crazy things. I never worried about that. There was no fear. In fact, I remember taking Kylie, our oldest daughter, to the park, and I was telling her, I was filming her, hey, can you jump from this part to this spider web part of the
Oh boy, I remember that video.
Oh my God.
Well,
and she jumps and she falls and and you hear her go, oh, and she falls down and grabs a thing and she's laying on her back with all the leaves and everything. And she gets up and she's checking to make sure everything's working and she's dusting off the leaves and she goes, whoa, that was a cool, or something like that. And I'm thinking like myself, oh my God, we can't show mom this video until we make sure everything's working. Everything was working, but even then, like just watching it probably made your heart sink, even though you knew everything was fine at the end.
Yes, that made my heart sink. And you forgot to mention, as she's falling, the chuckling that's happening in the background.
Yes, I was laughing.
Yes.
It was funny. It was funny, especially once I found out that she was okay.
Yes.
But yes, I was chuckling because for us, we just were constantly falling and hurting ourselves and getting back up. Like, to me, falling wasn't necessarily dangerous. It was just part of the fun.
Yeah. And that's where we need to connect to ourselves, because those default behaviors are so easy when we're not mindful and aware and grounded for us to go down those default behaviors. Absolutely resonate with mom here. And also, what a wonderful opportunity to practice something different.
So one parent asked, hey, I try to stay calm, but their child still escalates and really struggling around that. So I thought, what is your response to something like that?
I think my first thing is I'd love to get a little bit more information, because sometimes, and we talked about this in the last episode, sometimes our energetic state is anything but calm, even though we're trying very hard to say, quote unquote, the right thing. So we may, a child spilled, a child fell, a child is having a tantrum, and we're saying, it's okay, you're okay, you're safe. How about you come and sit next to me? But your body is completely tense. That child is mirroring that, not necessarily your words.
Yeah, they don't care what you say.
Yes.
They care how you show up. Or if anything, they care about the tone and the pace so much more than the words themselves. And it's really, that's where it's so important to, like we said in the last episode, it's so important to check in to where your body is, instead of starting with what behavior you want to stop in the other person.
I love that reminder. And so that's my curiosity, is when I try to stay calm, what is that actually looking like in real time? And then, there are going to be times where we can't quite get to calm as much as we'd like to. I think even naming that in those situations, and we talked about that in the last episode too, that authenticity helps with regulation for your kids, because now there's congruence around what you're saying and how you're behaving.
Yeah, I like that.
And then also remembering, that sometimes kids need time. So if we can stay consistent, even if we have to step away momentarily, but if we can stay consistent and give them a little time to get back to regulation, this is also one of those things that knowing how to breathe and having that as a regular practice really helps in times like these, because your kids can recall that and do it almost automatically versus trying to teach them in those moments what to do.
Yeah. And ultimately, if your energy is around some agenda with how you want them to shift or change or do something, it's disconnecting, it's dysregulating. If your energy instead is around connecting and hearing and caring for them, and then through that connection and care, you trust that you'll figure out what to do after that. That's much more connecting.
This episode of We Be Parents is brought to you by We Be Calm, the child calmer designed by doctors and loved by parents.
Struggling with bedtime routines or managing your child's anxiety? We Be Calm transforms deep breathing into a fun and engaging activity, helping kids find their inner calm. Perfect for bedtime stressful moments or anytime your child needs a little extra help to stay calm. Visit webecalm.com to learn more and bring tranquility to your family. We Be Calm, because we be in this together.
So how about letters from our listeners? This is one. My 15-year-old son has been really distant lately. He barely talks to me, and when I ask how he's doing, I get short answers or an eye roll. I try to stay calm, but I end up feeling frustrated and shutting down too. How can I co-regulate with a teen who doesn't even want to engage with me? Ooh, great question.
And there's a couple of things there just to start off. One is to remember that everything that they're doing is to meet needs. So even when they roll their eyes, they're trying to meet needs. And the eye roll to me is helpful because it's them basically saying, I'm not really loving what you're doing, but I don't feel comfortable speaking out about it fully. I'm only comfortable enough to roll my eyes. That's the closest that's the amount of comfort they have around saying, I'm not really happy about this. I'm not really enjoying this, or something like that. So remember, the eye roll is a type of expression. And then the other thing that before we dive in, I think that's really important is don't think of people as not wanting to engage with you. I think if you assume that that's true, it's disconnecting. Instead, assume that they are keeping quiet they're meeting needs again for protection, for ease, for flow, for harmony. So if they think that engaging is going to lead to something, less harmony, or they're going to have to do something where they don't want to and their need for autonomy and choice is going to come up, they're going to protect those needs by not engaging. So think of it as, okay, they're trying to protect needs by not engaging. What needs are those? And if you're curious about that, that's the bridge to connection.
I think that's so important to remember. And again, that only can happen if we're grounded and we come from a regulated calm state, is our ability to look past the strategy that they chose, which is not engaging, and find that underlying need, which could be they're worried, trust is coming up for them, understanding, mutuality, partnership, autonomy. I mean, so many different needs that create distance and
Right.
what is perceived as lack of engagement.
Right. That eye rolling and lack of engagement to me makes me very curious. What needs of theirs are not being met in our relationship? Mm-hmm. And it's tough because parents will say, 90% of what I do is for my children. What do you mean I'm not caring about their needs? But we're often not caring about their needs with strategies that actually meet the needs from their perspective. So we might think we're caring for their needs, but then they have needs on their end that are still not being met. That curiosity is key.
Yeah, I love that. And it's hard in those moments where you feel hurt, like, oh, my kid doesn't want to engage with me or they don't care about me. It's hard not to feel hurt by that, take it personally, and then as a result, either disengage from the child or get annoyed or irritated or frustrated, which pushes and often exacerbates the needs not met versus addresses them, where you find a strategy that works for both of you.
Exactly. So in that moment, you're doing things in an effort to try and repair connection that's actually making it worse.
Yes. And you want in that moment too, is you want your teen to co-regulate with you, not you to co-regulate with your teen.
So what would you do differently?
Well, I think there are a number of strategies, and that depends on your connection with your child. Sometimes it could be something just like, hey, I'm here. Should you want to listen? Now, if there's opportunity for repair, that's a bigger conversation that you have with your teen around, hey, I know that we've done things differently in the past and maybe that didn't feel great to you. I'm working on doing things differently. And I'm wondering if you'd like to experiment with me. My hope is that this feels better to both of us. And my desire is to connect with you because I care about you. So, a variety of different opportunities, and that really depends on where you're at with your connection with your child.
I think that's the bottom line is your focus connection, or is your focus enforcing a rule or being right or convincing your child that you're right and you understand something they don't understand? The other day, Kylie and I had we have an agreement around using the iPad and then turning it off at a certain time and then getting ready for school. And if you're done and you're ready, then you can turn your iPad back on. But she came up with an agreement that she said worked for her, that at 7:15, she'll turn it off. And if she doesn't turn it off, she'll not use the iPad at all the next day to be able to see, hey, is it easier? Sort of like a consequence around that for her allows her to see what it's like not using the iPad at all, which has happened in the past. And she said, Dad, actually, I have a lot more time. This is nice. I don't have pressure. But anyway, it happened again this time. And I said to her, I said, hey, so it's later than 7:15. Do you want what, per our agreement, then that means that we're not going to do the iPad the next day. And she said, okay, fine. And I knew from that tone and the energy that she was agreeing to it, but she was not, it was not something that was actually meeting her needs. And people listening might say, well, you're punishing them and there's consequences. Of course, it's not going to meet their needs. But it's not about making them happy. It's about her connecting to her needs, and for me to be focused on the connection versus a consequence. And if I was just focused on the enforcing an agreement, I'd be like, great, I don't care if she's happy or not. The agreement was kept. But instead, I said to her, I said, Kylie, it's more important to me that you don't see this as punishment, but instead some agreement that you want to follow through with to see what it's like the next day. And also, we're just keeping the agreement. If you want to change the agreement or you want to do something differently, I'd rather you not do this than it feel like punishment. So let me know how you would handle it if you were in my shoes. And what was interesting was that she came back to me later and said, Dad, I'm fine not using my iPad. I understand, and I'd like to keep the agreement. But you see, that energy is different than, okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's the key, is it's not about, we can get to a way that meets my, and not about being permissive. We're going to figure out a way to keep agreements or navigate new agreements. But I want her to be doing it because she sees the needs it's meeting, not because Dad is making her do it. And that sometimes takes a little extra energy and wherewithal to stay in that tension of that place where, hey, this feels like punishment, but I also don't want to be permissive. How do we navigate that? And what's cool is when you share that with the kids, and especially when I ask her to do what she would do if she was the dad, and she hates when I ask her to do that because she says it's hard being the dad. But that's the point, is that she gets to come at it from a different perspective. And I think that's, as parents, if we can focus on connection, not permissiveness, but connection, we're going to do ourselves a huge service.
And I love that. And in connection and differentiation, you're not taking on water, because when she says, whatever, it's fine, it's very easy for that energy to permeate to you as well. For you to take that on. Now you're irritated because why are you getting upset? You broke the agreement. And how that can escalate to serious disconnection, which results in lack of engagement from them.
Right.
From these kids.
Right. And that's where, like if I forget to turn on the dishwasher at night, we have an agreement that I'm going to give you a 10-minute massage. And it wasn't a punishment that you're giving me. It was me saying, hey, I want to really remember. And if I don't remember, I want you to know that that's how much I care. I'm willing to do a 10-minute massage. So it's not that I just don't care. It doesn't matter. Obviously, it matters. So it met my need for mattering and consideration. It was a fun thing. But if I was like, fine, I'll give you a massage, that wouldn't feel good to you because you don't want it to feel like punishment. And I think with kids, it's not that you're okay with me not putting the dishwasher up either, but we can find a way to get all these needs met that don't feel like punishment. And if we as parents can do that with our kids as much as possible, the first step is just pause and to feel, hey, I'm co-regulating with her. And when she's like, fine, Dad, I am feeling the tension too. And I'm like, well, I don't like this. So let's put our heads together. Let's see if there's another way.
All right.
I'll do the next letter.
Okay.
You can answer. So the next letter is, I always end up mirroring my child's tantrums instead of helping them calm down. How do I break this cycle?
You know, we talk about, I was stepping into it's so easy, even if you don't sit down and tantrum with them, to go one way or another, become overwhelmed by the level of upset, or turn around and, yell, enough, stop it, calm down. Either way, mirroring that upset and responding as such. And breaking the cycle really is pausing. And it's so hard to do in the middle of a tantrum, especially if, it's one thing if it happens at home and a totally other thing if it's happening publicly, as to how it impacts you and how quickly you want it to stop. But that's where parents can practice outside of specific situations as well. And, we talked about that in the last episode. We mentioned it a little bit here, but it's really finding your ritual and practicing it when you're calm so that you can use that very quickly. You can access that in moments like this. So for me, when I think about, oh my God, my child's tantruming, my first thing is I'm going to take a couple weeby breaths before I do anything. And in those weeby breaths, I'm grounding myself. I'm empathizing with myself in this situation. And I'm regulating myself so that I can come to my kid and that we can figure this out together. And sometimes just that calm is what your child will need to not be upset, but at least begin to regulate their own body and bring that tantrum level down to where you can figure out what's going on and maybe find other strategies to address the upset.
So it's really about that self-connection and then connection with them versus trying to jump in right away and stop the tantrum.
It's the self-connection and the regulation. If you can be self-connected and tense, and that is not going to, it's finding your calm.
Before you do anything with the child.
Mm-hmm.
So it's counterintuitive to let the kid keep going. And unless there's a fear, there's violence or they're going to get hurt, it's just uncomfortable sounds. So assuming they're safe, letting them keep going so that you can regulate your body is so essential and sometimes counterintuitive. Because usually when somebody's screaming and carrying on, we're like, oh my God, this must be really serious. It's an emergency. And knowing that, oh, actually, it's not an emergency is helpful.
Even in an emergency, if both people are panicking, it's not going to be a good result.
Yeah, that's true.
So even if it is an emergency, that much more relevant to find your calm so that you can be effective in your solution.
Yeah. Good. So the other letter that I wanted to bring was from somebody who said that they feel really guilty when they lose their cool. And how do they repair with their child? How do I repair? And I want to bring people's attention about the repair. We have a whole episode on the repair, episode 3. It's one of our earlier episodes. And the repair is so important. It's such a helpful tool because it takes away the pressure of having to get it right. We're to this day, as practiced as we are, we're getting it wrong so much. And I'm putting the word wrong in quotes, that you're just doing the best you can, and then you clean up your mess. And that's all this is about. Have the courage to make a mess and the skill to clean it up. And you can create, so those skills we talk all about in episode 3, but it's acknowledging it, and naming it, and then working through the impact of it.
I love that reminder. And I think it's so important because when you start a new practice, you are going to be getting messy. I mean, it's part of learning and perfecting and being able to access it almost automatically and with kind of a default energy is it's not going to go well the first couple times or maybe multiple times. And you're going to hone and build the skills like any other muscle. And then over time, but that ability to repair, to be able to say, I'm diving in, it's going to get messy, and I'm okay with the mess because I know what I can do with that.
Yeah.
Is really key.
Exactly. Make those messes. If you're not making a mess, you're probably not trying hard enough.
Just one last thing.
Parenting isn't about being perfectly calm. It's about showing our kids how to come back to calm together.
Yes, parenting is not about being perfectly calm. And I love that notion of calm together, how crucial that is. It's not just you being calm. It's not just them being calm. It's traveling this journey together.
And that's what I love. We're biased about the We Become because we designed it. But one of the reasons we put the bracelets in there's a bracelet for the parent and there's a bracelet, smaller one for the child. And it says, we be in this together. And it's all about that bracelet just triggering an awareness, a reminder of, hey, I want to show up a little differently. I want to show up and be calm. And the child can show the bracelet to the parent can show it to the child. It's basically saying, hey, how about taking a wee breath? Let's approach calm differently than just yelling calm down.
Well, thank you all for listening to our episode today. Please remember to send us your experiences at parents@webetogether.com. And please leave us a review to help more families find connection.
Yes, when you subscribe, it really helps us out. So thanks so much.
Your experiences and feedback are invaluable to us.
Please email us at parents@webetogether.com with your own cheers and tears, as well as any questions or stories you'd like to share.
Thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you next time.